Jeffrey M. Smith is the best-selling author of Seeds of Deception and Genetic Roulette, a filmmaker and leading spokesperson on the health dangers of genetically modified foods. He's the founder of the Institute for Responsible Technology, and he's traveled to 45 countries over the last 22 years, exposing the devastating impacts of GMOs and Roundup and the ways in which the biotech industry has tried to cover up the evidence.
Hi, this is Jeffrey Smith again with Hyla Cass. Dr. Hyla Cass, I'll do the introduction this way. I was having dinner with my friend Hyla, and I invited another speaker at a conference who had written a book, who was well known, and we were all together, and he whispered to me and said, "What's your name again?" I said, "Hyla Cass." He goes, "This is Hyla Cass? She's famous." Well, famous Hyla Cass, welcome to GMOs and Roundup.
I remember that dinner.
Yeah, it was great. And the thing is, the reason why there was this kind of like awestruck is because you were like one of the big pioneers on the globe for integrative medicine. I mean, you're one of the first psychiatrists to take people to not prescribe drugs, but to have, positive reactions to actual supplements. You have a book about how to supplement your prescription, so what your doctor doesn't know about nutrition. So you teach doctors and you have patients, and you actually know everyone. Whenever I have a friend who has and this is going to get you in trouble, whenever I have a friend who has a particular problem, I'll call you up and say, "So who's the best person in the country for that?" And you happen to know everyone, or you know someone who knows someone.
I know someone.
So you have a book on addiction. You have a book on 8 Weeks to Vibrant Health. You have a book on natural highs. And basically, I find that your knowledge is pretty vast because you actually are on the cutting edge. You're always finding the new information and informing the rest of the field. So welcome to helping us also break through with new information on the impacts of GMOs and Roundup on the system and what we can do about it. You know somewhat about GMOs and Roundup. I know that. And I did a survey of 3,250 people and what got better when they switched to non-GMO and largely organic food.
Right.
One of the most common results was anxiety and depression got better. And I figured because you're a psychiatrist, we might start in on that. And digestion was number one, and there was problems with the brain fog and all this stuff. There was 28 different conditions. But what do you think might be happening as an expert in mood and behavior and the physiological states and the supplementation and all that? What's happening with these people so that when they switch their diet, all of a sudden their depression gets better, their anxiety goes away, their mood uplifts?
All right. Thanks for asking. First thing you need to know is that most of our neurotransmitters are made in the gut. And the gut is a very, very important part of our gut-brain system and seriously affects mood. In our gut, there are about 4 or 5 pounds of friendly bacteria called our microbiome. And that microbiome needs to have a friendly environment in which to live. Lots of fiber, lots of good food for it to eat. It doesn't like chemicals, doesn't like antibiotics, doesn't like glyphosate. Those things wipe out the microbiome. So can you imagine having this microbiome that makes our B vitamins, protects our immune system, protects the gut wall, helps in so many processes in the body, very, very important for neurotransmitters and for our brain, having those wiped out by the constant influx of a chemical called glyphosate, which is also carcinogenic. So, I mean, we know all the bad stuff about glyphosate, and there's a whole struggle in the FDA now about what they want to reveal or not reveal. And like, an FDA person just discovered, there's glyphosate in my cornflakes.
Yes.
Oh, what a surprise. Anyway, that's another story. So people are ingesting large amounts of glyphosate without knowing it. It should be listed on the ingredients on our cornflakes box, but it's not. So there you go. So it's killing our microbiome, which is interfering with our neurotransmitters, causing inflammation in the gut and in the brain, and creating a lot of havoc in our moods.
I've talked about the microbiome. We interview people in this series about the microbiome. How is it? Can you get into more specifics about how my mood might be affected by which gut bacteria is in my gut and the shape of it? What is the mechanics there, so we can understand if we're going to heal from that? Let's break it. Let's go down to the next level.
Well, we know that the vagus nerve is an important pathway. It's an afferent pathway that travels both ways. The signals travel both ways, but largely from the gut to the brain. So here we have the longest nerve in the body. Can you imagine going all the way from the brain, all the way down to our gut in a single nerve? So it's carrying impulses. The microbiome, these friendly bacteria, are actually sending messages to the brain. And they could be good messages, or if they're not there, they're not sending messages. There's also the inflammation caused by glyphosate. It's causing inflammation everywhere. And an inflamed brain expresses itself with anxiety and depression. They're not a Prozac deficiency.
So let me these two things. You said it's afferent. I don't know. What is afferent?
Afferent means it goes to.
Okay.
Efferent is from. That's from Latin ex, and and the is add to.
All right.
Didn't you take Latin?
No, I didn't.
Oh no, I did. I went to school in Toronto. That's why.
Oh my goodness. So let's do, before we do about the inflammation, because that's quite interesting, and there's a lot of inflammation related to this. The nerve, how would the nerve convey happiness or sadness or whatnot just coming from the gut? Does it send alarms, which sends is there any deeper understanding of that vagus nerve? I've heard about the vagus nerve for a long time, but I don't really understand what kind of quality of information and what kind of experiments they've done to show that actually bad bacteria or changes in gut inflammation changes the signaling of the vagus nerve, and that changes the way the brain reacts.
Well, they've done research on rodents, rats and mice, and when they cut the vagus nerve, and I'm not sure I like animal experimentation, but it does give us this information, they don't connect anymore. And there are gut changes, brain changes based on that. So we know that there's a lot more that we have to learn. What we are finding out, interestingly enough, is there's enough research on this, that there are specific bacteria, and it's not just one, but the number of them, that will actually enhance mood. And there was one that I was introduced to recently called Target GBX. GBX sounds like very space age, Target GBX, but it means Target Gut-Brain Axis. And it contains specific probiotics, specific bacteria that actually can enhance the mood, which is pretty amazing. And I actually tried it on some patients, and not only it did the usual thing that probiotics do, which is helps bowel movements, helps digestion, and many other things, but it also very specifically had an effect of people feeling calmer and happier.
All right. This is interesting. Calmer and happier. Now, when I think of calmer and happier, I think of kava or some people St. John's wort or some things. What would you find in addition to this? This is very interesting. We'll come back to the inflammation piece, but let's take a tangent here. Calmer and happier. Mm-hmm. What other supplementation would you recommend, or have you had clinical experience with, that helps chill?
Thanks for asking. The two important chill supplements are 5-hydroxytryptophan, which helps make serotonin, and GABA and theanine, and a few others that actually help to make GABA. So GABA is an amino acid, but GABA is also a neurotransmitter, gamma-aminobutyric acid, which is why we call it GABA. So when somebody is feeling, for example, how I can tell if somebody says, I have to have a drink when I get home. I mean, I'm just so jangled, I just have to have a drink. I know that they're low in GABA. And what I do is I give them a product that contains GABA, theanine, and some cofactors, because it's just like baking a cake. You need to have all the ingredients, including some B vitamins and some other cofactors like zinc and magnesium, to make these neurochemicals, these neurotransmitters that make us feel good. So when I have these people who, like, I gotta have a drink, I tell them to take my Calm product, which has those in it, because I made these up for my patients at a time when we really couldn't get them. Now there are a lot of other products on the market, but I still like mine because I know where they come from.
Now, I'm going to bring this back to GMOs now, because you mentioned zinc and other cofactors like minerals. And one thing that glyphosate does, it was originally patented as a descaler to clean boilers and pipes, because it's a chelator. It grabs onto minerals and doesn't let go. It grabs onto all of them. And it grabs onto selenium and zinc and cobalt and calcium and whatnot. And when it's a trace mineral, then there's not a lot of it in the body. And so when you bring in the glyphosate, it might rob the body of some pretty key cofactors. So
it's scary. That is
tell me why
scary.
it's scary. From a medical standpoint, if I robbed you of these trace minerals, what could you expect to be happening? And this could explain a lot of the conditions that occur, and then we can think about the supplementation to overcome that.
Well, glyphosate is dangerous in so many ways. It causes inflammation. It causes leaky gut. And what you're saying is it depletes the minerals. It's made to do that to kill the insect. It's
the weeds, the weeds.
The gut. Well, but when you spray, you spray the weeds, and you also want to.
It doesn't kill the insects directly, but it actually kills these indirectly by messing up their navigation.
Okay. So it ruins our gut. It actually ruins our gut by killing the microbiome, by depleting these essential nutrients. These minerals are needed for so many. Zinc's needed for probably 300 different processes in the body. It becomes part of enzymes that make things happen. We are big chemical factories. We're mind, body, and spirit. But on the body physical aspect, we need to have all the ingredients necessary to make all the things that make our body work, including neurotransmitters. So if you don't have those minerals to make neurotransmitters, you're in trouble. You're going to be anxious and depressed, because that's how the brain expresses that it's out of balance.
Now, you mentioned the tryptophan precursor as well when you mentioned what you give. That reminds me of the shikimate pathway that Monsanto bragged is only found in plants and not in humans. Therefore, because glyphosate blocks the shikimate pathway, it's safe for humans. Well, it turns out the gut bacteria use the shikimate pathway to produce tryptophan and the two other aromatic amino acids, and that's the precursor to serotonin, and which is the precursor to melatonin. And then I was talking to Zach Bush, who you know, and he was talking about the cells along, which you know all this, the cells along the gut. 30% of them are endocrine-producing cells that can produce serotonin. And if you rob the body of gut bacteria, again, the poor animal experiments, you take out the animal's microbiome, and these cells don't produce serotonin. So, first of all, is the reason why you're supplementing with the tryptophan in order specifically to produce the serotonin. And if we end up suppressing the serotonin, what happens to your patients when they have low serotonin? And then is there anything else you can do to supplement that?
Yeah, with low serotonin, the signs are anxiety, depression, and it's a kind of a hyper kind of depression. There's a different kind of depression, which is low dopamine, in which people can't get their motivation on. They can't get up in the morning. They basically don't want to move. They don't want to do anything. Whereas the low serotonin depression is anxious, agitated, has trouble in the evening. These are particularly women who will eat a whole pint of ice cream in the evening because they're low in serotonin. And it's actually the body's signal. This is very interesting. In the evening, it gets dark, and the brain signals that it's time to go to bed. How about that? We have this 24/7 lifestyle, but in truth, we're supposed to go to bed when it gets dark. So they don't have enough serotonin. So they're eating carbs. They're eating cake and ice cream, which are carbs, which help to get tryptophan over the blood-brain barrier to make serotonin. So it's crazy. And so these poor women are saying, oh no, I'm eating all this stuff at night. I don't want to. It's mindless. And I watch TV and I'm going to eat one scoop of ice cream and I eat the whole thing. Okay, that's all low serotonin, which is from low tryptophan. And when you've interfered with the shikimate pathway, are not making tryptophan. So you're in trouble. So we need to supplement. So how do we supplement? We can give tryptophan. We can give 5-HTP, which is down the pathway. Some people don't convert tryptophan to 5-HTP so well, so it's maybe better to give the 5-HTP, and it also doesn't need any help getting across the blood-brain barrier the way tryptophan does. Tryptophan requires some carb to take it across. 5-HTP doesn't. So it may be better, but sometimes with some people who are very sensitive, I'll actually use tryptophan so that the body can decide how much it wants to take into the brain or not. So it really is just what's better for that individual. So
you mentioned dopamine. It's interesting. I mean, I was talking to scientist Michael Antonio, and he said there's no scientific research to show that the shikimate pathway in the gut bacteria produces enough for the whole body, but there's no scientific research that shows that it doesn't. So it is something that produces the tyrosine and the phenylalanine and the tryptophan, and that would produce the dopamine too, the tyrosine producing the dopamine. So if that's blocked, it might block the dopamine. So if the shikimate pathway is suppressed and that is reducing the amount of both dopamine and serotonin, would you have a double dose of the two types of depression, where the agitated one and the can't get off?
You might have some difficulty focusing and concentrating. You may have what looks like ADD, and doing things that are sort of not in good judgment. People who are ADD are often impulsive, doing dangerous things, driving too fast, things like that. And again, the treatment is actually giving tyrosine or phenylalanine or both, because they're on the same pathway, as well as the cofactors, as I mentioned, the B vitamins, as well as the minerals. And if you've had glyphosate, and if you have it in your system, and most of us do, sadly, you really do need to supplement. So supplement with, say, a multivitamin, a really good, high-quality multivitamin with enough of the individual ingredients, enough of the minerals, and the specific amino acids.
All right. So this is really interesting, because when people change their diet, then they report that ADD also is something that their children in particular who are struggling with can reverse. So we have the sleep problems, which could be related to melatonin, which comes from the serotonin. We have the mood and behavior. We have the mood thing, the anxiety and depression. You just named it. And then you have the overweight issue, which was the third most common benefit of switching to a non-GMO organic diet. There may be many other reasons why people may lose weight, but the binging at night in order to supplement the serotonin might also be related to the obesity.
So you're better off taking a couple of tryptophan or 5-HTP after dinner to protect you against the binging, because you won't feel like binging. So it's not a matter of white knuckling it. It's so hard. And these poor women feel so bad about themselves. They feel like weak, and if only I could do it and not do it. It's a whole struggle, like any kind of addiction. It's a struggle. Well, I believe that this takes the struggle out of addiction. And in my Addicted Brain and How to Break Free, I really describe that. I say you're not weak or immoral or, just stupid. You're not. It's just because your brain goes offline and you're taking whatever you need to take to feel normal. So it's really kind of an emergency reaction. If you prevent all this by taking the right supplements, besides the diet, I'd say diet is first. Supplements are supplements, or supplementing your diet, but we've covered diet in a way, so I really want to focus on the supplements. When you take the right supplements, lo and behold, these bad habits, the eating at night, the ADD, the anxiety, the depression, they just go away. They go away. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to take medication. I mean, isn't this horrible? People taking medication on top of the glyphosate poisoning. They now have all these drugs in their body, which create brain changes. Now, it's not to say sometimes medications aren't useful. Short term, though, please, short term. And most psychiatrists really want to see you on them for life. That's what they've been taught. That's what they do. They don't quite know how to get you off them. So I know a lot of people come to me because their psychiatrist refuses to help them get off the medication. And it's hard to wean down off medication if you don't have the help of nutritional supplements.
You know, it's interesting. This angle really redefines how we are motivated and how we are, and what our impulses are, whether we're impulsive, whether we're depressed, whether, it just could be the lack of a particular enzyme or mineral or whatnot that can completely redefine our behavior and lifestyle and relationship and success at work. It's really
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? There's something called pyroluria, and that's a little obscure, but it's not really. It's not uncommon. Being deficient in B6 and zinc. And so these people tend to be socially awkward, don't like to be around people or just have a few close friends, like to sit with their back to the wall. There are all these like quirky things, like, and you think, well, that's just your personality and that's how it is. Lo and behold, you test these people, and you can just do a paper and pencil test for pyroluria and give them B6 and zinc. And suddenly they can walk into a party and be sociable and just be like, quote, normal, be the way they want to be. And they didn't have to have psychotherapy. They didn't have to have retraining, cognitive behavioral therapy. They didn't need any of that. They just, their brain was working better. It was working on all cylinders. It wasn't being deprived of B6 and zinc. One of the things glyphosate does, as we're discussing, is depriving you of the B6 and zinc. The B vitamins are made in the gut. It's a big source of our B vitamins. So we need to supplement. So when you supplement with the B vitamins and zinc, if you happen to be low in zinc, it'll also bring your copper down. I'm saying a lot of things here, but I'm on a roll. So high copper is not uncommon. It can come from pipes and various other sources. And if you don't detox well, you have high copper, low zinc, and you have anxiety. So by giving more zinc and B6, you bring down that high copper level, because zinc and copper are like a seesaw. Yeah. So you need a little bit of copper, but not as much as a lot of people have. You bring it down, and again, you become normal. Your anxiety goes away. And high copper, I learned this from Bill Walsh from Chicago, really, really smart man, Walsh Research Institute. High copper is very common in postpartum depression. So keep that in mind.
You know, it's interesting. I could see someone going around the outskirts of a party, you know, it's someone who's sort of hanging around the side with their back to the wall. Here, take this, and then watch them move into the party.
It might take a couple of days or so, but it really works fast. I mean, it's like we neglect our body, neglect it, because we don't know. And then when we pay attention and give it just what it needs, it just thrives, you know. And when you give the body medicines, they cover the symptoms, but they don't help you to thrive. They don't correct the imbalance. So I'm not here to rag on medicine, but I'm saying let's treat something at the root cause. If we're destroyed the microbiome, let's replenish it. If we're low in B vitamins, let's give them, and so on.
So I want to share that I was talking to some farmers and veterinarians about what happened to their pigs and cows when they switched back to non-GMO, or they switched for the first time to non-GMO. And I've heard from some people that that cows are social animals, but certain cows were being irritated and lonely and away from the herd until they switched to non-GMO food, and then they became social again. And then, so you know,
there you go.
They're the B6 zinc.
They didn't have therapy. They didn't have group therapy. That's amazing.
And then there were the pigs who were chewing each other's ears and tails and were being aggressive, and they also calmed down. Now, at the same time, another group of pigs This is a great story. It's in the film Genetic Roulette. This farmer used to have the easiest job on the farm, according to his brothers, and they'd always prod him about it because he took care of the nursery. And even though there was 3,000 piglets at any given time, evidently it's easy to take care of 3,000 piglets. But some years ago, all of a sudden it became the hardest job on the farm because they were constantly sick, and they were so sickly that they weren't jumping around like piglets. They were lying down and lethargic all the time. They'd get up when he brought in the food, but then by the time, even before he left, they'd be lying down because they were tired. And he blamed it on the new pig genetics. In other words, moving pigs into the area causing sickness. They had new pigs from Canada, so it was blaming it on Canadian bacon. So for 14 years, he was constantly injecting. And then one of his consultants said, go non-GMO. So we decided to feed non-GMO corn. And 2 or 3 days later, the pigs started changing their behavior. He's walking around with one of his brothers, and he joked, well, maybe it's the non-GMO corn, as a joke. But by day 11, he called the consultant, and that's how I met him, because I met the consultant at a conference. And he said, you couldn't believe, he was stammering. He was so excited. He said, it's the GMOs. 14 years ago, I switched to GMOs, and that's what caused the pigs to be tired and sickly. And he dropped his medical use, his medicines by 75%, and the pigs were acting like piglets again. So
Wow.
This energy thing, and when you look at the 28 different conditions, number 2 in improvement was increased energy. Number 4 was reduced brain fog. So talk to me, I mean, this energetic thing, can you tell me
Absolutely.
what's happening in terms of the energy?
I'm still on it. I'm back there with the pigs, because I'm thinking that you're injecting these animals, right, with medicine.
Yeah.
And then people are eating those animals.
Yeah, that's
with
true.
the antibiotics, which are developing antibiotic-resistant bacteria, and also wiping out your microbiome because you're eating GMO-fed food, cows or pigs or whatever. So I just had to throw that out.
No, that's good. That's good.
That
And if you want to get technical,
is influencing my people.
yes.
If they're eating GMO food, GMO meat, they're in trouble because they're getting antibiotics, because they've been, and so on. So just to keep that. And the corn has glyphosate in it, on and on.
Yes. So energy, I mean.
Energy, no question.
Is it just, I mean, I've talked about the mitochondria as these little batteries that can be damaged by glyphosate. And there's a lot of
huge. The microbiome, the mitochondria. The mitochondria are the little energy factories in every single cell. There's hundreds of them. And particularly in heart muscle, there are even more than that. So they have the most dense mitochondria. So if your mitochondria are being poisoned, just think of it as being poisoned, you can't make ATP. ATP is the fuel that runs us. So these piglets, I just have this image of 3,000 piglets lying down like that's so sad.
Yeah.
And sadder when you think of all the implications. And so this is what's happening to humans. This is what's happening to our children, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
That you lose your energy because your mitochondria are not getting what they need. They're being poisoned. They're also not getting the nutrients they need. There are a lot of nutrients that are required for the mitochondria to function properly: carnitine, magnesium, CoQ10, ribose, okay? And those become unavailable. So we're starving our mitochondria, which are our energy factories. We're not making enough ATP. And of course, people are feeling lethargic. They just can't get it together. Brain fog. When you remove the GMOs and you're no longer poisoning the mitochondria, and then it's at that point, it's probably a good idea to supplement and kind of refeed the mitochondria. But even if you don't, the body has an amazing capacity to heal. And if you're eating organic food, you're going to be supplying some of those nutrients. Taking a high quality multivitamin will help as well. So all of these things will help to revive those amazing, amazing mitochondria. And so much will get better.
I want to circle back to what I put a placeholder when you talked about the inflammation of the gut and the inflammation of the brain. The gut-brain axis. Let's finish up that piece. I know people are finishing up. Yeah, let's describe the whole thing in a minute and a half so everyone gets the full understanding of the state of the science. why is it that if there's inflammation in the gut, there's inflammation in the brain, and what would be the manifestation, the symptoms of inflamed brain?
Any psychiatric symptom that you can think of, from bipolar, schizophrenia, anxiety, depression, ADD, is a reflection in some degree of inflammation in the brain. Because the brain is struggling, it's fighting against toxins. It has free radicals caused by the toxins, and it's an inflamed mess. And you have the same thing in the gut. They're very connected, and the same things that affect the gut will affect the brain. I mean, very often people who are gluten sensitive have brain fog, don't have no symptoms in their gut. They don't, I don't have any gluten problem. My gut's fine, but they have brain fog. That could be a sign of gluten sensitivity. And when they're tested and they have antibodies to gluten, and you know that they are gluten sensitive, and you remove it from the diet, the brain fog goes away, the inflammation of the brain goes away, the anxiety, depression, whatever the symptoms are. And it's not that simple either. Sometimes there's also mercury and cadmium and lead. And I just shudder to think of all the kids exposed to leaded water. That's such a big, big issue. And it's affecting their IQ. That's huge brain inflammation.
My question is, if it's all this brain inflammation, what happened to Sigmund Freud? What happened to trauma expressed as antisocial behavior that causes psychiatric disorders? But a lot of it is the toxins and the just physical makeup of the brain.
And I think the psychodynamics exist as well. So it's not to say we don't have psychodynamics and that therapy isn't useful, but a lot of it we can short circuit, we can treat much more quickly by, first of all, treating the substrate. When the brain and the body are fully working properly, have the right vitamins, minerals, amino acids, then the therapy issue is much easier to deal with. The other thing, this is really interesting, and that is the role of trauma in everything. There was the ACE study, Adverse Childhood Experience study, in the 90s, based in Kaiser, covering thousands and thousands of people. And the first author was Folletti. And it's an amazing study that only now is getting a lot of exposure, which is that if you've had an adverse childhood experience, some kind of abuse, an accident, something that was shocking to the system, and you may not remember what it is, and it may not have been a big one terrible thing. It may have been cumulative, being put down by a parent or an older sib or whatever. When you have that, you actually are more prone to chronic fatigue syndrome, infections like Lyme, different viral things. It affects your immune system. It affects everything in the body when you have that. Why? It's like, where'd that come from? Well, it affects the HPA axis, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is our fight or flight mechanism. So if you think of this, your child, you're being abused, it puts you in fight or flight, but you can't go anywhere. You're captive, right? You're a child. You have to put up with whatever is being dished out. So it all sits in your brain, and you become hypervigilant. And again, you grow up and you act as normally as you can. But there's always that, it's like, I'll give a really good analogy, a computer that has a program running in the background, and you never knew it was there. But your computer's kind of slow. It's not working right. It's a little glitchy. You call your computer tech, and they go, oh, you got this program running in the background. Well, I don't even know. I put it there. I don't even know who put that program there. Okay, I'll clean it up. So the computer tech cleans it up, and your computer starts to run. Same with the brain. You clear out that trauma in the limbic system. That's where it's held, in the limbic system, particularly the amygdala. And you do that with various kind of trauma work, EFT, EMDR, sensory experiencing, many different ones. Don't be insulted if you're listening and there's something you really love that I haven't mentioned, but there are many, many techniques. There are even shamanistic techniques for this. And when you open up the limbic system, sometimes just talking about an issue can clear it up. When you clear that, you have a much better running computer. So you're able to fight bacteria and viruses and Lyme and be more present emotionally, not have a false self, which many of these people develop. And it's very, very common.
So this is fantastic because it adds a whole new dimension to healing from GMOs and Roundup. Even if you're healing from childhood trauma, by doing that, you're improving your body's ability to do the healing. On a related subject, I tell people that if you end up accidentally eating a GMO or you can't help it because you're not in charge of your diet, etc., don't worry about it. Because worrying is toxic. The GMO is toxic. Now you have two toxins. So I will expand on that and say this. I'll expand on this, Hyla, and say this. If, to the audience, if you have been like frantically writing down, oh, she said carnitine and she said this, and what was this thing about ADX? It's like, there are ways that this particular interview could create stress and fight or flight if people are too worried about it. So I want to remind that even the approach to healing, even the approach to hearing this information, it's like we have choices to take it in such a way that we're not running that program and then having to worry all the time about I don't eat GMOs and I avoid them, but sometimes like I accidentally take it or I'm traveling and I can't read the menu and speak the language and I have to sort of wing it. It's like, okay, whatever. And then I don't carry this heaviness and I want to share that. Now,
Ooh, that's so good.
Speaking to that frantic person that's trying to wonder what it is for them, I get from our conversation, Hyla, that in a lot of cases it is so individualized. You're going to take labs and you're going to do an interview and an intake form, and you're going to customize a set of supplements for that person. But if you were to say, okay, these things can be given out generically to everyone, maybe not the super hypersensitive person that reacts to everything, but in general, the general population, what would be your list if we're talking about
my basic list? Okay.
Yeah, healing from GMOs.
Right. For one thing, you need to take a good, high quality, high amount of ingredients in a multivitamin, high enough zinc, high enough B6, because some of them are just so ridiculously like underdosed that you don't get any benefit from it. A good model is my twice daily. Some people don't like taking 6 a day. You really probably should take 6 a day of any particular vitamin that come in 6 a day. So I stopped carrying the 6 a days because people didn't want to take 6 a day.
Right.
Also taking other things. So I'd say take like my twice daily multi, which has quite a lot in it. There's something that I don't want to be a commercial here, but I can only describe, and then if you can find something elsewhere that's not mine.
And let me give you permission here, because the thing is, you're actually one of the world's pioneers in this, and so if it's not available, you create it. And so if you create it because you think it works, are you going to send someone to something that doesn't work? Of course not. So talk about what works for you, and then if people give people the key to what to look for in case they want to go somewhere else.
Okay, so a multivitamin, thank you. Fish oil, at least 2 grams a day, because that really counters inflammation and does a lot of other really good things. A probiotic, get a really good high quality probiotic. There's that particular one that I mentioned, Target GBX, but there are many other good probiotics on the market. So get one of those. I have some on my website. And I developed this brain recovery AM and PM. Here, I'll show you the AM bottle, and then there's the PM bottle. And they're different. The AM bottle has all the vitamins. The PM bottle has all the minerals, because minerals tend to be calming and they're good at the end of the day. And the vitamins at the beginning of the day. But it also has things like glutamine, tyrosine, all those GABA, all the amino acids that I mentioned, and at the appropriate time of day. You want to have the wake up ones in the morning, because it says wakes you up along the bottom there. And the other one says relax and unwind. So it goes as a pair, and it also contains a high potency multivitamin. So what I tried to do was put everything in one big
Mhm.
formula,
Mhm.
so people don't have to think about it. So it's really like 5 formulas in one. So that's
Yeah, I don't like the handful of pills lifestyle. Where you have to drink so much water that you get full. You're supposed to eat it at the meal, and it's like,
No, I know. So for people who just want, like, I just want to take, minimal amount, I'd say my brain recovery AM and PM really feeds the brain,
uh-huh,
um, and a probiotic and a fish oil. So those are basic.
uh-huh.
And then if you need extras on my website, after the listing for brain recovery, if you find you still need more focus, more concentration, particularly in the morning, and you're not quite getting it, it's an improvement, but you're not quite getting it from the brain recovery, then the focus
Yeah, what's
is
in that?
what's in it. I can't read the fine print now. B6, C, potassium, phenylalanine, and tyrosine, which help make
All right, I just want to say
dopamine.
the phenylalanine and tyrosine, because I'm always bringing it back to GMOs and Roundup. That's like I'm
Mhm.
so tunnel vision here. So phenylalanine and tyrosine are produced in the shikimate pathway, which can be obstructed by glyphosate. And then there was the mineral in there.
Yeah, you need to have some cofactors. So it has potassium, B6, vitamin C, but none of these are enough to really give you your full vitamin mineral complement, but they help with the focus. They help move the tyrosine and phenylalanine into dopamine.
I see.
It's a bit of but it's better to take, we need probably at least 25 milligrams of B6 a day. I have a number of people on 100 milligrams a day. So, somewhere in there is your ideal range.
And now we're talking about supplementation for the general. We're not talking about curing disease. We're not talking about FDA, FTC. We're all okay. But is there any caution about certain people? I mentioned the super sensitives. They generally know who they are, but anything people need to watch out for?
Well, if you have phenylketonuria, and people who have that know that they do, don't take the focus because it has phenylalanine, and they don't
And I want to speak
break it
about
down.
children's multivitamins. Some contain aspartame, and friends don't let friends
And
eat aspartame. Um,
amen.
it's a poison. It breaks down into 3 poisons. I could tell. I think I'll just tell a brief story here. Do you have anything you want to say about aspartame before I?
Yeah, don't eat it. I've had people come in with horrible anxiety, and they were drinking a lot of diet sodas. Stop the diet soda with the aspartame, and their anxiety went away. I did not have to give them medication. I wouldn't have anyway, of course. But had they gone to another psychiatrist, they would have been put on medication for their anxiety. I took them off aspartame. So I want to hear your story.
Wow, aspartame. It's incredible. I have a lot of stories. The reason why I know about aspartame is because it's made from genetically engineered bacteria. So it falls in my wheelhouse because, now I can talk about it and I can study it and interview people on it. So GD Searle, which was later bought by Monsanto, they were creating a ulcer medicine. And the person who was working on it and then ate a sandwich and he noticed there was sweetness in his fingers because he was touching it. So they just said, okay, let's make it a sweetener instead of a medicine. So they ended up theoretically doing complete fraud in their rat studies, where they allowed the animals to age for a year before checking samples and throwing away tumors. I mean, I don't know the exact detail. I've heard different people describe it, but it was such a fraudulent situation that the FDA asked the Justice Department to intervene and to find them guilty or to investigate fraud. And I had never heard that ever happening. So the prosecutors, it was interesting, the first prosecutor quit after starting to prosecute GD Searle and joined the law firm for GD Searle. So then the assistant prosecutor, he also joined the law firm, but he first let the statute of limitations run out so that they couldn't do the lawsuit. Then later was hired for $400,000 by the GD Searle law firm. The GD Searle decided that the FDA was absolutely not going to be allowing it to happen because it was so dangerous. And so GD Searle hired a CEO who had political connections and that was Donald Rumsfeld. And Donald Rumsfeld was in charge of the Reagan transition team, and the first day Reagan got in office, Reagan had an edict basically eliminating the FDA commissioner's ability to do anything, and then put in Donald Rumsfeld's friend from the Defense Department. And before he got kicked out under suspicious investigations, the first major decision he made was to allow aspartame on the market and then allowing it into diet sodas. And so the FDA was receiving all of these complaints from consumers, and they categorized them into 92 different categories, including brain tumors and seizures and blindness and terrible things. And they stopped collecting the comments. It was like, now there's too many comments. Rather than taking aspartame off, they stopped collecting the comments. There was one study.
That'll do it.
Yeah, no more. There's no more comments. There's no more problems. And they had, there was a study done at a hospital, and one of the administrators actually had a detached retina and another one bleeding eye, and they had to stop the study because the people who were on the aspartame, they didn't know which they were taking, started to get these type of disorders. We sell on our website at seedsofdeception.com. There's a whole article, a whole Sweet Misery. It's a film on aspartame and aspartame poisoning. And I break it down in my book, Genetic Roulette, how it's broken down into 3 toxins. So I mention these things just for one basic message. Don't eat aspartame. Don't let your friends eat aspartame. And there's more stories there, but I don't want to go. We have to finish up this interview, Hyla. And so you've mentioned the AM and the PM. You've mentioned the focus. And you mentioned getting on a healthy diet, that provides a lot of things that people need. Is there anything else that you'd like to recommend as sort of your closing statements here so that you can send people on the way with general recommendations?
Well, this is a very general recommendation, and that is in alignment with you. This is the only body you have this time around anyway. Treat it appropriately. Treat it with respect, because when you do, you will be rewarded. When you don't, you will have a really rough time. And I want you to have the best time possible and the best life possible. So take care of yourself. Eat non-GMO, eat organic, eat the right foods, eliminate the bad ones, and take supplements if you need to. And I invite you to visit my website, cassmd.com, CASSMD.com, where I have more information. And it's just been such a pleasure. Jeff, this was great.
Thank you, Hyla. And thank you, everyone. I want to say, Hyla, your presentation calms me down.
You don't need to stay calm. Okay.
And I want to say that I do respect the intricacies and all of the cofactors and all that stuff. And I just like how you simplified it in terms of taking care of yourself. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Safe eating, everyone.
We know our experts are sharing a lot of vital information with you. Don't worry about capturing it all. You can rewatch or re-listen as often as you want to, or share with your friends and family when you invest in one of our affordable educational packages. When you do, you'll receive the video and audio recordings and the transcripts, plus a list of each expert's recommendations to refer to. In addition, when you choose the Platinum Edition for just $97, you will also receive discounts of up to $350 to $750 on supplements, books, and programs offered by our speakers. Simply click the link below to learn more and to purchase.